Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of zZounds Live. I'm Justin here, and we're going to be taking a look at these three small but mighty amplifiers next to me, and they are all part of the new mini amp head series that's been released lately. So we're going to do a big deep dive, and I'm going to walk you guys through all three of them, and we're going to get to hear some tones, and yeah, just have a good time with them. So without further ado, let's hear that amp that I just opened up the stream with. This is the Freidman BE Mini, and that's going to be our first amp up to the table here. So the BE, that's a 30-watt solid-state amp, and the same goes for actually all three of them. They're all 30 watts, all solid-state, no tubes, but they sound incredible, and they feel incredible too. So just to get that point across, they feel great. They do not feel like a typical solid-state circuit. So that kind of is the biggest selling point for me personally, but there's no real way to convey the feel to you. Just trust me that they are awesome. So we got it going through a Marshall 412 here, and the Freidman was set with a decent master volume. The gain was only at about 25% or so. So this is a monster of an amp. But again, let me just give you guys another taste of some open chords on that same setting. And yeah, you'll hear how absolutely monstrous this is at just about 20-25% gain. So yeah, sounds absolutely great, and that's that sweet spot like plexi tone. So for anybody out there who's looking for a plexi sound, of the three of these, the Freidman is the main guy you're probably going to want to be looking at. That is its main bag. It harkens back to the old BE 100 amps, the actual full tube version of that amplifier, but we got it in a mini version here for a fraction of the cost. Sounds great though. So besides hearing how good that sounds, let's take a look at the amp controls, and we'll check out the layout and what we can do with it. So if you notice, it's just a typical, pretty simple tone control layout. So starting from left to right, we have the volume control. Then we have our bass, middle, and treble. And then there is a presence control after that. And then finally a gain control. So it's just standard classic controls. Bass, mid, treble. Presence is going to nudge up your upper treble frequencies. And the main thing to look out for are these dip switches, though. You'll notice that there's one of them, the cut switch, and another one, which is going to be our tight switch. And the those will both respectively adjust our gain staging and then the bass frequencies. So I'll give you guys a walkthrough of those in a second, but it has those for extra tweakability. So, you know, for instance, if you're running a really dark sounding cabinet, you can use that one of those switches there to kind of soften up your bass frequencies if you're getting a woofy sound, especially at high gain. So that actually has some pretty great like tweakability, so you can get some different flavors. But again, let me play that source tone, and then we'll mess around with the EQs here. So here's that same tone again. Okay, so let's start off and go to our EQ controls so you can see how they work. So bass was about 75% of the way up. I'm just going to roll it all the way off. So you'll notice it'll thin up a little bit. But the cool part about Freidman amps is that they're just super thick circuits. So even when the bass is rolled off, you're still actually getting a pretty decent amount of bass response there. So it won't totally suck out all the low end from your tone. But where I was running it before was about 3/4 of the way up. So I'm going to return that back. Let's go to the mid frequency, and we'll just hear it scooped all the way off. first. And let's hear how that sounds. So again, still has a ton of bite because the presence and the treble controls are in there. So again, when you have the mid pulled all the way out, you're actually kind of almost getting more of a neutral tone, and you're not just sucking out all of the clarity from your tone. So let's move out to the treble. So I'm going to roll that down, and then we'll get the mid somewhere in the middle. You'll hear how that responds. All right, now you're noticing how interactive those controls are. It really revolves around those treble controls. So when I have the treble rolled all the way off, that's when you're going to actually start having some super interactive controls with the mid. So let me return that back to about center. And again, you'll notice how it totally changes the dynamic of the gain staging. So very cool. And then lastly, we have our presence control, which is just going to, again, kind of shelf those upper frequencies. So I'm going to dime it so you can hear what that sounds like. So yeah, super snappy, but great part is it's not overly harsh. So I kind of liked sitting it at about maybe 60% when I was messing around with it here. So I'm gonna return all that back. So we got ourselves a really great tone there. But let's check out the gain knob now. Our gain knob is gonna be super interactive. So just like a normal tube amp, as you increase the gain, you're gonna get a lot of extra bass definition, extra treble definition. So let's hear it. Got our gain at about 25%, but since this is a absolute monster, I'm going to go to 50%. You'll hear how this rips. So So again, that's half gain, so it's just absolutely awesome. I love playing with this amp with some like thick palm mutes. It responds with a ton of touch sensitivity there. So yeah, you get great definition with palm mutes. Here's it at 75% gain though, after I just adjusted it. So again, now you're getting to the upper limits of the amp, so it's going to start getting more compressed. It does react similar to a tube amp, which is great. It kind of starts tightening up the lows and everything. So I'm going to maybe back off a teeny bit on the bass now that I have that turned up. So So yeah, awesome. Sounds really, really great. Saturates absolutely very similarly to that BE circuit. And that being said, actually, though, this one draws from the similar circuit design as the BE overdrive pedal. It's not quite exactly the same, but Dave Freidman said that they had borrowed a lot from that, then put a Class D power stage, in the setup here. So you're going to get a lot of similar tone, but it just adds a lot more weight with that different power stage. So anyways, let's go to the switches now. I want to show you guys those switches so we can see how those interact. So we got a cut switch and a tight switch, and it's hard to really hear these when my gain is that high, so I'm actually going to back it off to about 50%. That's kind of the sweet spot of these amps. You get a nice crunch, but not anything too crazy. All right, so the cut circuit, that's going to basically interact how the gain stage is cascading. So let me show you it with the switch in the lowest setting. Words for you. right, now let me adjust that switch up. So it tightens it up a little bit. And then again, let me go to the top part of the cut switch. So based on what cab you're using and what gain setting, you can actually kind of saturate kind of the upper mids and trebles and kind of get a different type of drive characteristic, which is really awesome and super useful. Because let's be real here, when you're playing an amp like this, you're probably not going to be using too much clean tone. So if you get a bunch of different variations of the drive tone, that's absolutely a great feature for them to have added in. And the same goes for our next switch. That's the tight switch. Pretty much the same deal. It's going to be adjusting the low frequency character. So like I mentioned before, when you got an amp cranked, the first thing that's going to kind of blow out your signal is those lows. So if you have something that's going to roll off and act as like a high pass filter, that's actually really helpful to kind of just get rid of the mud in your signal. So here's the tight switch all the way down, and I'm at 50% gain. So that was the same tone you heard before, but I'll just play it again just to give you a reference. Okay, then the tight switch up. So yeah, a little bit different flavor, and then finally here's that tight switch all the way in the top position. So yeah, different ways that it interacts with the gain control are my favorite part about this amp. So let's dial in. Let's put that at the middle, and then we'll actually put the cut control also back in the middle. And then I'm going to push this to about maybe 60% gain, and we'll roll off some of this presence. We'll roll off some of the presence. Let's hear how this sounds. Cool. Now I'm going to go back to the lower gain settings because we got a lot to cover here with these other amps. So I'm just going to do a couple slightly crunchier tones with this. Then we're going to move on. So I love the sound of the presence on this amp, so I'm going to return that back up a little bit. So treble and presence are going to go up. I'm going to actually kind of crank these mids here so we get some pretty cool sounding stuff. All right, let's hear this. Definitely in hard, kind of juiced plexi territory right here. Awesome. I really love the neck pickup on this tone too. So it really handles those frequencies in a super interesting way. So not to give the quick and dirty here, but we are going to move on. But that was the Freidman BE Mini so far, and definitely check that out if you want kind of that plexi inspired tone. Up next, we're going to go to the Diezel though, and this is the VH Micro. And so give me one quick second here while I switch over our connections to that, and then I'm going to dive into the Diezel VH Micro. right, all right. All right, guys. Thanks so much for waiting there. We are now dialed into the next amp in our lineup, which is the Diezel VH Micro. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a sucker for high gain amps, so when I saw one of these mini amp versions come out, I was totally into the idea of that and definitely wanted to get my hands on one, because this is actually just one channel from the old VH4 amp. It's their third channel, which is the channel that everybody was like obsessed with when that first came out. It was that just in that sweet spot of gain where it wasn't too crazy and was perfectly usable for rhythm and lead. So they made this mini amp with just the third channel. I believe it was the Mega channel, funny enough, but this amp is based around the third channel of the VH4. So similar layout to the previous Freidman. It's got all of the same controls. So we got a master volume, presence, middle, bass, treble, gain, but this one has a deep control, and that's just going to be basically a resonance control, or a control to adjust your lowest frequencies. So you can kind of add in a bit of weight to it if you're finding that like, for instance, you're playing at a low volume, you're going to kind of lose a lot of that girth for it. So you can always use the deep control to kind of like fatten up your signal. So without further ado, let's just hear the amp where the controls were left at earlier. So got gain at about 75%. I'm gonna maybe dial it back to about 65%, and then we'll hear how this guy sounds. So again, yeah, right out of the bat, off the bat, you hear that the amp is just amazingly saturated. I love the character of it. It just really works well for like palm mutes and chords, and it really like just immediately reminds me of that old Tool Adam Jones sound, because Adam Jones was one of the early adopters of Diezel amps in the 90s there, I believe. So yeah, it's just got that really like thick kind of a harmonic low end tone there, and so. Yeah, let's mess around with it, though. I'm going to mess around with some of the controls, and I'm going to dial off a little bit of that treble that we heard and kind of see it at a little bit more mellower tone. So yeah, let's get going on that. All right, so the gain's rolled back maybe 25% less and a little bit less mid and treble. So. So yeah, very, very cool. Still a bit saturated, but the one thing you'll notice compared to the other two is that it just has so much note definition when you're doing chords. It's really hard to believe that even at that much gain, you can still hear separation between the notes. So that's always been the Diezel thing, but somehow they got it to come through even on the mini amp version of it. So very, very cool. Let's dial it back, though. I want to show you guys the Diezel at like maybe 35 or 40% gain, and you just get these really awesome crunch tones. So yeah, it has a little bit of a cleanup too. When you roll down your volume, you really get some cool. So super cool. I really liked that sound as well. Works good with drive pedals as well. It just takes dirt really well. So yeah, let's mess around though. I want to show you guys the range on the EQ knobs on this guy too. So just like we did before, I'm just going to roll off some bass. You'll hear it without it, and then we'll move on to the rest of the ranges there. But let's start by cutting bass. So I'm sure the first thing you notice is makes a huge difference this time versus the Freidman when you roll off the bass. And you might be thinking, oh, well, I don't want that. But it just proves how kind of interactive the controls are. So if you're a tweaker, you like fiddling with your knobs a lot, this one has a massive range on just how much gain you have there in the bass frequencies. So I actually was kind of pleased when I heard that, since you knew that you can suck out as much bass as you wanted. So again, I'm going to kind of turn that one probably more like all the way up this time. You'll see how it interacts with that brightness of the circuit. So yeah, again, it's pretty thick. Not overly so, though, so you got a lot of room to work with. Yeah, let's keep going. Let's go to the middle, though. There's just so much to cover. I feel like I gotta rush through all this because we just got so much tone here. All right, so let's take a look at the mid control. Turn it up a bit. So super cool. Got a bit of bite. So back to the treble. Let's roll that one off though. So just like we did with the Freidman, we'll see how the character changes when it's rolled off. Now the neck pickup. So very cool. It kind of gets a little fuzzy at the lowest range there on the neck, above the 12th fret with the neck pickup. Sounds super cool. But let's kind of meet in the middle right there. Get that treble control back up. Now let's go over to the deep control. All right, we got a question here. It says, which is the most universal? I play mostly country and metal. The one that is the most versatile of the three is definitely the Bogner. Bogner's the one that's going to be able to get the cleanest. The circuit has some switches that are designed to accommodate that, but it also goes totally out of control, high gain too. So honestly, if you're looking for the most versatile, you play country and metal, you're going to get the most mileage out of the Bogner. The other two sit a little bit more in the high gain territory, so those will work better for those kind of styles. Oh, for sure. Okay, yeah, you want some EVH stuff on the Diezel? Sure, I got you on that. Yeah. You don't need to twist my arm for that. So, all right, let me get some gain on that, and then I'll show you guys some high gain stuff with the Diezel. So yeah, obviously pulls it off super super well. So, and it's got all that cut to it. I got a reverb pedal over here. I'll show you guys on the Bogner, but with the Eddie Van Halen stuff with like a really awesome plate reverb, it just totally nails it. You could also do that with the Freidman too, though. I did not play any Eddie Van Halen, but oh my god, it like nails that early brown sound. But I'll show you guys some stuff with the Bogner later that also is tailored towards the brown sound, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. I'll stick with some more Diezel tones, and then we'll finish up and get to the Bogner last. But yeah, that was the Diezel at like a pretty extreme tone there. So I'll just play some more chords and give you some palm mutes and leads. I just absolutely love that. It just, again, there's just so much note definition on those chords. Even when I was playing that stacked power chord right there, usually blows out a lot of amps, but like, oh my god, you just hear every note in that. Very, very cool. So anyways, let me go do one more quick tone with this, and I'll roll down the gain a little bit, and then we're going to get over to some Bogner territory. So here, let's get to about 40% here. This is where I feel like we're sitting in like hard, like Adam Jones Tool territory right here. So I was kind of sitting around with the guys earlier. I was playing. So yeah, very, very cool. That like just barely saturating Adam Jones tone is super cool, and I believe he was using that VH4 on some of those older records. So, so yeah. Hold on, let's see what this question is. Oh, gotcha. Yes, yes. More Diezel praise for sure. Yeah, these absolutely are worthy of the praise. $329. You absolutely cannot beat something this sick. So, so without further ado, though, I'm gonna go switch over to that Bogner. Bunch of tweakability on that. So give me 1 second, and I'm gonna hook that up, and then I'll be right back. All right, thanks so much for waiting, guys. I just fired up that Bogner. This is the Bogner Ecstasy Mini. And when I first saw the collection of amps, I didn't realize how much kind of switches and tweakability you have on this amp. But as the person earlier in the chat asked, this one actually covers the most ground. So of all the three amps, this one's going to have the most versatility. So if you really want something that's going to be like maybe possibly on the cleaner side, I'd say go for the Bogner. And without further ado, I got a mid-gain tone dialed in, but let's hear this guy. Man, it's just thick. It's a thick boy here. So yeah, the Bogner is just like when people here in the back seat of the production here, the guys in the back end here, they plugged in the Bogner, were just blown away with how this thing sounded. So it's that good. It's just amazing. So yeah, again, this is a mini version of the Ecstasy. So uh, let's take a look at this guy. So similar layout again to the other ones. It just has a couple other like little hidden tricks there that we can mess around with. So you'll notice on the left, that's going to be our volume control. And then I believe from there, hold on, I think that's the presence. Yeah, we got presence, treble, middle, bass, and then a gain knob. So that's going to be your classic layout. And the presence knob is super interactive. And so yeah, full EQ control. But one thing to keep in mind with this one that's awesome is that it actually is, I believe it's an active EQ control layout. It's actually subtractive and additive. So dead center is actually your neutral EQ, and you can subtract or add from that center point. So again, you get some like really wide sweeps with the tone controls. You could dial it into your heart's content there. So so I got everything almost down the middle, except I believe that's the bass control it's turned up. So and it was super thick before, so now you know why. Let's go and roll all of it off. This is bass off, so you're going to get an idea of just how crazy this is. So. So again, it's just like the Freidman was. It's totally usable. You can take out the bass, but it does not feel like a super sterile tone there. So, so again, let's roll it back up a bit. I liked it at that kind of 60% position. Now let's go to our mid and treble controls. So I'm just going to dime the middle, and we'll give a little bit of treble too for brevity there. So I can't stop playing open chords on it because it just rips playing it out of this Marshall with those just plain open chords. If you dial it back, you can kind of get like that like AC/DC tone. And so yeah, you can hear there's a lot of cleanup on it too. So you can roll down your volume or do some kind of softer picking and get some really great tones. Yeah. That's rolled off a teensy bit, but yeah. It's just crazy how these things respond similar to a tube circuit. It's really awesome. So again, I said this at the beginning of the stream, but it just feels good when you play these. So I'm having a blast kind of messing around with these. So so again, very, very interactive circuits. So let's go back up to about 50%, let's say. And I'm going to take that mid and treble. We're going to put it back in the middle again. How about that? So just kind of everything neutral. Let's look at these mini switches. So the mini switches that it have give you an insane amount of flexibility here. So I believe the one on the left, I think that was the, oh yeah, that was the Variac circuit. So that's kind of dropping the voltage on it gives you this crazy amount of compression. I'll show you guys that in a little bit where I juice it and just do an Eddie Van Halen thing with the Variac on and show you that like old Plexi Brown sound. So, but before I get there, let's do the other switches. So other switches, this one's going to be your gain switch. So it has a minus and a plus. Believe it or not, I was in the minus before, so this one has a lot of room left in it to go hotter. So let's hear it. Let's bump that switch up to the plus. Oh, actually, you know what? I lied. I'm sorry. It was on the plus before. Let's go to the minus. Here, this is going to be for a mellower circuit. So, like I said before, you get a lot of room to play like cleanest of the 3 amps on this section. So I'm just going to go to my neck pickup, and we add it in the lower gain. So let me just the treble up, get some more clarity on this. I'm just going to dime everything up here. pretty. You get a really pretty sound there. And again, the bass control was pretty high, so you can even, clean it up a little bit further still from there. But this amp does allow you to get to a clean tone. It's a little bit hairy with that minus portion of the gain switch activated. So, hold on. Do we have a question here in the chat? No. Once again, if you guys have anything that you want to ask me about these amps, feel free to drop it in the chat. And I'm always here watching the screen so I can answer any questions that you guys have. But let's keep moving on. So here, this next one is a mid-frequency switch. And I love that they added this because you have a neutral setting. That's the standard center point. But when they were designing it, they knew you'd be using this with a bunch of different cabinets. And so when you have this mid switch, you can either brighten up a dark cabinet or vice versa, and it just sets it to kind of give you some more clarity. So let's hear it in the left position there, and I got my treble pickup on. So yeah, super bitey. It kind of reminded me of like Rebel Rebel earlier. Really like crisp, kind of jagged, a little crunchy in the minus section of the gain. So very cool. Let me show you the other section though. There's a switch section to the right on the mid frequency. I believe it's going to hover over around 2.5 kilohertz or so in that spectrum. I think that's what Bogner himself had said it was. So that's like kind of really like cut through the mix kind of sound. Yeah, it's just so cool. I love it. And then with that being said, the mid-frequency switch that I've been kind of experimenting with here is interactive with the mid knob once it's engaged. So you can kind of mess around with some symbiosis between the mid knob and that. So I got the mid knob about 60% up. How about this? Let's just like over exaggerate it. We'll crank the mid knob. I'll show you the switch positions then, but it gets really cutting. And then the neck pickup. So you can kind of get some clarity on those, especially if you kind of roll off the bass control a little bit on the neck pickup. You can get some really like kind of a milkier tones there. So that being said, let's go to this reverb. I've got one in the effects loop over here because, yes, all three of them do have effects loops, which is very cool. So you can run all your time-based effects and modulation stuff right in the back of these guys. For now, I've got a Mako reverb plugged in. So let's just hear that with the with this neck pickup tone. So it sounds really great. It works awesome with lead tones too, so I'll get to that in a second. But again, that is the series effects loop with a reverb. Just heads up, I'm going to be using that for probably the rest of the demo. All right, now let's go to our last switch here, and this is going to affect basically our gain character. So what did they call this? Oh yeah, that's right. It was the pre-EQ switch. So this is going to be obviously before it hits our EQ there. So let's hear how it sounds. This is in the neutral position. And sorry, let me roll down that mid and treble back to the center point because it's still pretty spiky. So. All right, sounds pretty good right there. All right, now let's go over to the left position. Changes the structure of the drive there. So it gives a little more bite there, and then let's try over to the right. Cool. And again, that's interactive with the drive control. So guess what? How about this? Let's fire up the gain switch not from the minus. We're going to go to the plus now, and you'll hear how that really just hits the drive circuit. Super cool. All right, so yeah, super just scorching right there. So let's bump that switch, the pre-EQ switch on the right. I'm going to bump that back to neutral. And let's see, all the knobs are at noon again, so. So yeah, awesome, love it. Now, just so I can get the most out of this amplifier, let's actually bump up the gain a little bit, and then we'll go to that variac circuit that I mentioned earlier. We're actually gonna pump that on, and what you get is you just get a bunch of compression from it, a bunch of just kind of that like pushed to old plexi sound. You'll get a volume drop on that. You'll get a noticeable dip. Gives you a little bit more room to fudge with it though, but yeah, I'll just increase the treble so we get a little more clarity. You'll hear the variac. So yeah, that is just a ripping tone. I just absolutely love the variac sound on that. I could sit on that all day. So stop me now before I just waste everybody's time with this. But it's one of my favorite sounds. That's with the variac switch engaged. Just to kind of close everything out, I'm just gonna again just keep the variac on. I'm just gonna probably just dime everything really quick. Maybe not the treble, but I liked where that was sitting. But let's get some of that presence in, and I'm just gonna hit everything with just full gain, and then we'll just get a couple ripping tones before I see this one out. right, so that is the Bogner Ecstasy Mini. Totally shreds. They all totally shred. And I don't know if you noticed before the scale of these things, but oh my god, it's like barely bigger than the size of my hand right here. So these things are 4 pounds or less, portable. They absolutely crush. They're $329.99, all three of them. So if you guys are looking for a cheap amp, whether it be a practice amp or maybe even a full gigging amp, I would have no hesitation bringing this out. It's 30 watts. If you're running it through a cab like this, you get insane clarity on these, and they're just priced right. I had a blast with these. These are not a gimmick. They are tiny just in size, but not in spirit there. So all three are perfectly viable amps, and I loved all of them. Thanks for tuning in. This was a nice long stream, but hope you guys liked this deep dive into all three of the mini heads. Again, that was the Freidman BE Mini, the Diezel VH Micro, and the Bogner Ecstasy Mini. So check those out at zZounds.com. We are still selling these. And as always, thanks so much for tuning in. This is Justin with zZounds. I'll see you guys at the next stream.